Hi class, welcome back. Today we will be discussing traits and probability. If you recall from last class, we discussed Mendel and his contributions and how he laid the groundwork for genetics. And so today we're going to kind of build off that a little bit. But first, I would like us to start with a Jamboard. So I'm going to have you guys go there, and you'll see that we have a little question about dogs. We got the Canis lupus here. That's the Latin name for the dog. Just so you guys know, all dogs are the same species. They're all Canis lupus familiaris, and they clearly look very different. And so the varied appearance of the dogs is an example of selective breeding, which is something we'll go over later. But for the time being, what I want you to do is I want you to think of a specific dog breed and a trait they possess, and explain it in a sticky note why you think they were bred to inherit their appearance. So I'm going to give you about 5 minutes to fill out a sticky note, and then we'll go over them, and we'll talk about that a little bit. All right? Awesome. Great. So now that you guys did that, let's look at some of the sticky notes that you guys left. All right. So I see that someone wrote that dachshunds are long to hunt in rabbit holes. That's true. Some of the smaller, longer dogs are meant to go into like rabbit holes and like badger holes and groundhogs and stuff like that for hunting for them. Beagles are bred for hunting. That's true. They're great hunting dogs. I think German Shepherds were bred to just be big and scary. Well, maybe, but maybe they were for protection and guard dogs. But obviously, I'm sure there are lots of good ones out there. Bad dogs are not born; they're made, right? So, golden retrievers are handsome and obedient and good hunting dogs. Sounds like that person owns a golden retriever. Chihuahuas were selectively bred to be lap dogs. That's probably true. I don't know what else we would use them for. Hairless dogs so they don't shed. Yes, there's hypoallergenic dogs too, probably for like the same kind of reason, but hairless dogs obviously don't shed, nor do they have those allergens. Racing dogs like greyhounds were made to go fast. Very true. They're obviously built, their frame is very skinny and muscular, so they're very fast. Poodles have curly hair to repel water. That could be definitely true. I mean, curly hair on a lot of animals kind of for that purpose. So, we could definitely look into that a little bit further. And then Caucasian Shepherd dogs were originally bred to hunt bears. I wrote that one, and I wanted to kind of show you guys an example of one. They were made to hunt bears. Nowadays, they generally are just guard dogs, but yeah, they were. That's what they were originally bred for, being big and being used to do that in Russia. Okay, so we're going to go back to the slideshow here. So the key concept, the key takeaway I want you guys to learn today is that inheritance follows the rules of probability. The inheritance of traits, I mean. You'll see that later on as we focus on the main session, the main focus here, which is Punnett squares. And you'll see that they kind of follow, you'll see that there's only so many different outcomes of two different parents with genotypes. When they make their offspring, there's only so many different types that they could be. So you'll see that in a little bit. First, though, I want us to reflect back onto the dogs. Again, I want to put on a quick YouTube video here. And let me pull that up right now. And this will kind of go on the question of the dogs and why they are how they are a little bit further.
Do you have one of these? Ever wonder who Fido's ancestors were? Well, scientists have determined that dogs evolved from the wolf more than 10,000 years ago. Selective breeding over many centuries has led to the creation of approximately 400 recognized breeds worldwide. Now, to better understand what makes your dog so special, let's take a closer look at his DNA, the basic blueprint for life. When your dog was conceived, he received 2 copies of DNA, one from his mother and one from his father. Which pieces of DNA are inherited from each parent is completely random. This is why there's variation in how siblings look and behave. In fact, brothers and sisters with the exact same parents are only 50% genetically the same on average. You may see this in your own family. There's likely a family resemblance, but chances are your brothers and sisters don't look exactly alike. Now, within each each strand of DNA are segments called genes. Exactly which genes you receive or inherit will help determine traits like your height, hair color, and more. Some traits are dominant, meaning you only need one copy of that specific gene to show it, while recessive traits require that you have two copies of the gene, one from your mom and one from your dad. Examining Fido's coat is an easy and fun way to discover his individual genes and traits. Let's look at several traits your dog may have. Let's begin with color. How does a dog get his coat color? It starts with the cells that produce color or pigment. These are called melanocytes. During development, these pigment-producing cells start out around the top of a dog's back and then spread down his body as if he had a can of paint poured over him. Black, brown, and yellow are the basic foundation coat colors. The first color, black, in most breeds is a dominant color, meaning you only need to inherit one copy of black to show it. This is why so many mixed breed dogs have mostly black coats. White spotting occurs when the dog does not have enough pigment cells to cover his whole body. Generally, the white areas tend to be farther away from the dog's back, like on his feet, chest, and the tip of his tail. Brown and yellow, on the other hand, are recessive traits, requiring a copy from both parents. Dogs can also have a yellow base coat with a black or brown saddle over the dog's back, as you can see in some breeds like Beagles and German Shepherds. A black or brown mask over their muzzles, like we see in the Boxer and Pekingese, or black or brown striping known as brindle, like we see in the Boxer or Mastiff. All three, saddle, mask, and brindle, are dominant traits. In terms of hair type, long hair is recessive and short hair is dominant in most cases. The curly-coated breeds like the poodle is semi-dominant, which means if you have two copies of the curly gene, your dog will have a very curly coat, as you can see in the poodle. But if you mix a poodle with a straight-coated breed like a Labrador, the hair coat looks wavy, like in a Labradoodle. Another gene, called furnishings, is responsible for giving a dog longer facial hair, like a cute beard and eyebrows. This is a dominant trait that can come from many different breeds, from Scottish Terriers and Poodles to Shih Tzus. Finally, head shape and ear shape and size are related to a number of genes coming together and acting co-dominantly, or working toward the middle. Ironically, a relatively small number of genes control the majority of the physical traits we see in our dogs, and many breeds carry most of these traits. Remember, a mixed breed dog is a combination of genes from its ancestors. If a trait is dominant, it only takes one copy of that gene to show it, and it could be coming from many generations back and still be seen. Meanwhile, recessive traits can easily be hidden from view. Now you can see why Fido's appearance only reveals part of his ancestry. The rest of his story is revealed when you take a closer look at his DNA. This will give you a better picture of who his ancestors really are and help you get to know him better too.
Okay. Let us go back to the slideshow real quick. Trying to figure out how to go right to that spot. But anyway, we're going to go here and we're going to look at how what I mentioned before. That video touched on recessive and dominant. And basically, recessive genes are ones that are suppressed and usually only expressed if you are homozygous recessive, which you'll see a little more later on. And then dominant can be seen whether you're homozygous dominant or heterozygous. Now, those words might seem kind of unfamiliar, but I'm sure at the end of the class you'll have a good understanding of what those words mean and kind of how they apply to all the different traits you have and Punnett squares overall. So Punnett squares are actual illustrations of genetic crosses showing how the different alleles pair up in the possibility of offspring. The Punnett square is a grid system. It's predicting all the possible genotypes resulting from a cross of two parents. The axes represent the possible gametes of each parent. So you'll see there's across the top is one parent, down the side is the other, and then a cross showing the offspring. There will be an example in just a second. And the boxes show the possible genotypes of the offspring. Now the genotype determines the phenotype. And we'll go over that a little bit more in a couple minutes. So again, here's the Punnett Square, and here's that grid system discussing the possible genotypes of the offspring. As you can see, parent 1 has capital A, lowercase a. Parent 2, capital A, lowercase a. Now that could be for a lot of different traits. In this case, it's kind of just a generic one, and you can see that these are the offspring down here. One of the possibilities of an offspring, about 25% of the total, because 1/4, has a possibility here of being capital A, capital A. Same 25% has a chance of being lowercase a, and then there's a 50% chance, 2 out of 4, that the offspring will have the capital A and the lowercase a, which we call heterozygous. It's like we were kind of talking about while we were going over that. There's the ratio. In this case, it's 2 out of 4, so 1/2 would be that, or 1 out of 4, 1 out of 4, and that's the ratio of the possible genotypes. Now we'll talk about how that's not necessarily the phenotypes in a second. So a monohybrid cross involves one trait. So much like that last one we just did with the capital A, lowercase a, it's going to involve a single trait. And, that could be dark hair color, it could be eye color, it could be attached earlobe, a lot of things. And you'll see a lot of examples. Now, if a homozygous dominant and a homozygous recessive have offspring, there will be a 100% chance, all heterozygous, all dominant. Now, what that means, if you can see here, this is that homozygous dominant parent. They have the 2 capital Fs. Now, purple is the dominant color, so they are definitely purple. Now, you see the homozygous recessive parent, you see 2 lowercase f's, that results in a white flower because they do not have the capital F. They don't have that allele. So their offspring, as you can see by this Punnett square, all 4 of them will be heterozygous, which means capital F, lowercase f. Because we established that the purple coloring is dominant, all 4 of them, although they're not homozygous dominant, all 4 of them will have that purple coloring. What that means is this one has, the purple phenotype is 100% here. Well, so is the heterozygous. They're both 100%. But we'll get into examples about how those numbers won't be exactly the same because there will be some heterozygous ones and several homozygous. You'll see in an example very soon. So if there's 2, this is that example. So if there's 2 heterozygous parents, you can see that there's a 1 to 2 to 1 ratio of homozygous dominant, so 1 homozygous dominant, then 2 heterozygous, and then 1 homozygous recessive. Now, 3 to 1 dominant recessive. That is basically talking about the phenotype there, and you'll see right here. So we have the 2 heterozygous parents, capital F, lowercase f, capital F, lowercase f, and they create offspring that there's that 1 dominant, homozygous dominant right here, 2 capital Fs. You can see there and there. Then over here and over here, we have the 1 heterozygous, and then we have 2 heterozygous because there's this and this go together. So you can see that there are 2 of those out of 4. And then the homozygous recessive is a result of the 2 lowercase f's that the heterozygous parents have. So, as you can see, in terms of the genotype, it's a 1 to 2 to 1 ratio. 1 to 2 to 1 ratio. But in terms of the phenotype, it's a 3 to 1 ratio, as we have 3 purple flowers because they all are exhibiting that purple coloring because they all have the dominant purple color. There's 3 of those, and then there's 1 that exhibits the phenotype of a white flower because they have the 2, they are homozygous recessive. So if you have a heterozygous parent with a homozygous recessive parent, you will have a 1 to 1 ratio of heterozygous again and homozygous recessive. You'll see that right here. And this is a good way to, this knowledge that we have from that first point is a good way to figure out whether a